Hello viewers and welcome back. Picking back up after the last lesson where we set up, designed, and used product key maps. In this lesson we're going to be looking at how to do the same sort of thing but for our till function maps. So by the end of this session you should have a clear understanding of what till function maps are, as well as the concept of what are called function panels and the various subfunctions or categories of till functions. Brief agenda for us. We will first chat about what exactly these till function maps are, and I'll show you the basics of what we need to do for a new database to set them up and assign them to our tills. Then we'll get into some specific function map configurations, explaining some common concepts, best practices, and so on. And we will finish up with a short demo where I'll show you how we can actually assign these function maps to our tills, and then show you a couple things in SmartPause, how to navigate through a function map and get to different panels and so forth. Cool. Well, before we even get into back office and start poking around, I should tell you a bit about what till functions are. I'm sure I've mentioned them in passing a couple times already in this course, and unbeknownst to you, we actually used a function map and a till function in the last lesson when we were in SmartPause. To be purposely vague for now, till functions are just about all the things that we can do from SmartPause aside from adding products to a transaction. So literally the other functions that we can complete from the till with the use of our till function buttons. So this includes a number of different types of functions. The one that we did actually use in the last lesson was a payment function, and we used that when we closed our transaction and we closed that and we had selected that payment button and then the cash button from the screen. But in addition to payment functions, we also have stock functions, we have discount functions, we have management functions, etc. Some of these you'll see throughout this course, but some you may literally never ever see or use because we really do have that many. But all these different till functions and their buttons can be placed onto till function maps. So this is similar to our product key maps and that concept there, although they are set up a bit differently. As you'll see in just a little bit, till function maps are broken down into what are called panels. I've mentioned these a couple times already, and I'll mention them again, but they're broken down into panels. And we have a bunch of pre-configured panels that we can use either as is, or we can modify them to our liking. Each of these various panels contains related functions. So for example, we have a management panel, and that management panel contains commonly used management functions. We have a stock panel that contains commonly used stock functions, a discount panel that contains commonly used discount functions. I think you get the idea. Now there are some panels that will populate on the till screen automatically for us, just depending on what's happening at the till. For example, if we're performing a table transaction, the table panel will be activated by default. Or if we open an account on the till, the account function map panel will be activated by default. Now we can manually navigate between panels by means of a special till function called panel selection, but we'll get more into that a bit later in this lesson. But after we've got a function map configured with panels, and within our panels all the individual till functions have been added and configured however we need them to be, we'll then be able to access them from SmartPause. How that's set up though is by assigning what's called a till function override map to each till. So this is similar to assigning a key set to a till. But if we want to compare it really like for like to key maps and key sets, or key maps and key map sets, the till function override map is sort of the key map set, and each panel we can think of as a key map, and then obviously each till function is the button. But once we've got that till function override map assigned to the till, its functions will be available on that till, and we'll be able to access and use them from that till. Now, I should mention that there are over 100 till functions, and getting to know all of them is just going to take time and experience. We definitely will not be able to get into a majority of them throughout this lesson or throughout this course. but we will be able to highlight some generalities, some common concepts, and so forth today and in upcoming lessons. But anyway, enough chat for now. I think we'll get into back office now, and we'll see how all of this can come together for us. So the first thing that we should look at actually are the operator privileges that are required to be able to access till function maps. Now, since till functions are in the system setup menu, the flag to control access to them, if I'll just open master setup here, the flag that controls access to them is of course going to be on the general tab in the system setup section, and it is about halfway down, maintain till function maps. So just make sure that's enabled for yourself so that you can access and maintain them. So I'll just click OK to save that. Next thing we'll look at before we do head to the till function map component itself is we're going to go to the venue store and till list, and in workstation maintenance, we're here on the till setup tab in the design section. We have this override map dropdown that I mentioned just a minute ago, and we mentioned this in the last lesson as well, but in the last lesson we sort of skimmed over it. But this is how we can set the till function map at the till level for each till. Obviously there are none created yet in this database, so there's nothing to set here. It just says none available. By the way, I should mention this as well. If you're wondering how we have till functions available, how we had them available on this till in the last lesson, I'll actually open SmartPause again so we can see them now. So on SmartPause we can see that we have all these till functions here already. So how did these get here? How are these here? And we can even navigate to some different panels. So just to show you what I mean by panels, these are different panels, and then I'm exiting out and going back to our main panel here. So how did all these get here? So these are due to the flat till scheme that's being used. And if you remember back to, if I just cancel out of this, back to our global settings from the system setup lesson, if we go over to this SmartPause scheme tab, we have the flat scheme turned on. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I have the flat scheme turned on, so that is why what we have here is the base map, which is grayed out for the flat scheme, is essentially hard-coded for us. So that is why I do have those till functions that are available. Even though it looks like I can't set a base map here, it's because I can't set a base map here, but that's why those functions are there. Those are functions that are included with the base map. So essentially they are a collection of default panels and buttons and so forth that are included with that base map. Now, if you are using either the tiles or the classic till scheme, you will then be able to change the base map and therefore change the till functions that will be available aside from what we're going to configure on our override map. But anyway, nothing that we can do here for now, since we don't have any till function maps in this database that we can set as the override map. So we will just need to close this, and I will need to open our till function maps component from within the system setup menu. So the tab that's opened here for us will list out all of the system's tills, and it shows which override map is assigned to each one, if any. Obviously we don't have any assigned to these because we don't have any yet. This tab also contains a number of buttons at the top, which can be used for maintaining till map assignments, editing and maintaining function maps themselves, editing keyboard functions, and editing till setups. Now some of these we will get to a bit later in this lesson. Some won't actually do anything for us now, again, since we don't have any function maps to assign or to edit yet. And by the way, we can also get to our workstation maintenance windows without needing to go into the venue store and till list by just highlighting the till from the list here and selecting edit till setup. I'll cancel that. So to get started, since we don't have any till function maps created yet that we can assign as override maps, we will first need to highlight a function map and use the edit highlighted function map option. That's one option, or that's one way to get started, I should say. Again, since we don't have any available, that's not going to do anything for us. Another option, once we do have some created and assigned, is that we could just double click from the list, but again, that's not going to do anything for us. What we're going to need to do for now is to go to this maintain function maps. That's going to open our function map list. Again, since we have nothing here yet, it's obviously going to be blank, but theoretically, or not theoretically, in reality, once we do have a list of function maps that are created, this would give us our full comprehensive list, and we could select one from here that we could edit. So yeah, I'm being a bit facetious by saying a comprehensive list because this is obviously empty for us, but it would be the best way to see all of the system's function maps in one list together if we did have a bunch added to our database. But this tab is where we do need to initially come to be able to add a new function override map. We do also have options to restore from disk if some have been saved, maybe from another database, and you're able to reuse them. But what we'll be doing today is just adding a new function map as I've already clicked there, where you can see that we then have a few different options to get us started. So of our current options, copy existing is obviously going to be no use to us at the moment. Because of that, it is going to be advised to use a template to begin. Although once we do have some added to the database, they can be copied if they'll be similar and may only require some minor changes, and that is a very viable option to use in that case. The blank option should only be used by advanced users who are already familiar with TIL function maps and are going to be able to actually create them from scratch. But what I'll do is select Use Templates, and we're then going to be presented with a small window here where we can select one of these templates to get us started. So what these are is a collection of sort of out-of-the-box or standard function maps and panels within those maps that are included with the software. So each one includes sort of a bare bones map of commonly used functions for their designated purposes in the different hospitality and retail environments that you can sort of see listed out here. So we've got one for bars, we've got one for a bistro environment, we've got one for a bottle shop, etc. It is important to note though that these are not necessarily intended to 100% cover your function map needs, but just to act as a starting point to then edit and amend to your exact specifications. So as we go through this, or after you finish this lesson and do this on your own, feel free to choose whichever one is most suitable for your purposes. What I'm going to choose, since what we've been doing in this course so far is setting up a full service restaurant in this database, is I'm going to select the table service one. You can see immediately after I've selected that, we are then prompted to enter a name. We can just leave it as the default though, but I think I'm going to call this one No Hats, No Stars Main Dining. Cool, so this is the one that's going to be used on our waitstaff tills in our fictional restaurant here. If we needed to, then we could create additional separate till function maps for the bistro, different ones for the bars, so on and so forth. Potentially, we could even have different iterations of each one that we might want to have on different tills at different times of the day or different days of the week. So we could create multiple till function maps for the main dining. So after I create this one, I could copy it, make a few changes, and then we can do things like schedule the different iterations of that same function map for different times of the day or different days of the week if we need to. And we'll cover that topic later in this course where we can see how we can schedule those types of things for us. But for now, we will stick with just configuring this new function map that we're in the process of creating at the moment. There we go. So I should mention that as far as editing or maintaining these go, whether we have opened an existing function map that we have created previously, or we're in the process of currently creating a new one like we've done here, the overall options and workflows are going to remain the same, so don't worry about that. A couple things I'll point out here. The name of the function map itself is going to be displayed on the actual tab as well as here at the top of within the tab, I guess I should say, where it says function map name, and we can check that there, really just to confirm that we are working with the correct function map that we're intending to be editing or working on at this point. So what we'll do now that we've got this open is just sort of go through this window bit by bit and explain everything. So I'll start from the top. This panel drop down here and the panel settings below it allow for selecting a current panel to work on and to maintain, and then some aesthetic configuration options within the panel settings here. In this area to the left are our button settings. So this section will change somewhat dynamically when a particular function button is selected. So when we've got a panel selected and we then select a button within that panel, you can see that some things over here will change dynamically when we select one. Now the options in the button section do largely remain the same, as you can see, but the descriptions of what some of these options control will change depending on the button, but more on those in a little bit. We will stick with our panels first, and we'll take a closer look at what they're all about, really. So we already know, I already mentioned that till function maps like this one are comprised of several panels, and they're kind of stitched or stacked or linked together, however we want to think of it. So since we used the template that we did, in this case that restaurants one, this new function map already includes these default panels here and the till functions within those panels. So more specifically, we can see that it's added a panel called function 1, another one called manager, a table panel, a delivery one for pricing and discounts, another for stock control, one for accounts, and one that is just called extra one. So as you can see, as I tab through those, there are an awful lot of useful till functions already included on these panels in this template. And while this function map is technically ready to be assigned to tills and could be used immediately if we wanted to, we probably want to modify it at least a little bit. By the way, I should mention that when copying an existing function map rather than using a template like we've done here, a similar workflow would be followed to what we've just seen, where we would name the function map and then be taken to this window where we can modify it. Alright, now it's important to note that when we're editing a function map, we are maintaining only the panels as they exist within this function map, as well as the functions on these panels. In other words, if I make changes to, let's say, the table panel in this function map, it will only change this panel here. It's not going to change the table panel on other function maps that may also be using a table panel. So all these different panels within the one function map you saw when we were in SmartPause can all be accessed from SmartPause in a few different ways. As I mentioned earlier, some of them will automatically become active based on a particular activity that we're conducting at the till, but we can also manually navigate between panels using what are called panel selection till functions. So if I change back to the function 1 panel here, there is one for getting to the account panel. So this is just a panel selection function, and the sub function is account panel, and you can see we have a plethora of similar sub-functions that will take us to different panels if we need to. Aside from the panel selection functions though, we also have some other predefined till functions that have been built specifically for accessing certain default panels. For example, there's another one here for getting to the manager menu, which we can see this is a manager function and the sub-function is called manager menu. So that would do the same thing as having a panel selection function pointing towards the manager panel. We'll really do the same exact thing, but we do have these pre-configured, and then we do have a handful of these pre-configured within their separate function lists like that. Alright, now as I've been showing you these different panels that were part of the template that I copied, you probably also noticed these buttons next to the panel drop-down for adding and deleting panels from the function map. So for adding, if I click that, you can see there's about 20 or so additional default panels than to what we already have in our template that we copied. These are only the ones that are not already on the function map that we copied. So if I cancel out of that, those 20 are in addition to these few that are here. So all up we have around 30 or so that are shipped or included with the software, but not all of them are in each template, only the ones that are sort of applicable to the template and how it's meant to be used. However, any default panel that does not already exist in a function map, which is then listed here, can be added to the map. Just keep in mind that you may need to add a panel selection function within another panel in order to access some that you might add. However, there are exceptions to that. As I've mentioned, some panels will be activated by default. And the other exception, and kind of goes along with that, is that there are panels that are included with the base map. So an example would be the function 2 panel here, which is going to show by default for quick payments. To demonstrate one use case, I will add the manager 2 panel as well. And then on the manager panel, what I'll do is I'll just use this space here because this is a double one here, but I'll add one here that's going to be a panel selection for the manager 2, so that's already set up there for us, and I will call that more manager functions. Cool. I should point out that it's important to include a way out of a panel that we've added. So some will already have something by default. For example, on the manager 2 panel, if I come back to this, there is a button labeled cancel or cancel menu over here, which is configured as a panel selection function, and it's set to default panel. What that means is it's going to return to the default panel just depending on the current till activity. Another option would be to have a panel selection button that just takes us back to the panel, the manager 1 panel, but a couple different options for us there. Just to reiterate, it's important to have a way out of a panel so that we don't end up getting stuck on it, and that could either be to cancel to go to the default panel or just to take us back to something like the manager panel 1, which then also has a cancel till function set up there. Now, if we do want to remove any panels from a function map, so maybe we decide that we don't need to include maybe this home delivery panel, we can use the delete button to remove it. We'll just be prompted to confirm that, and there we go. Don't worry if we've made a mistake and deleted something that we shouldn't have. We can always just come back in and re-edit. Cool. You can see in that case, this has reverted to some default functions. It hasn't gone back to that template as it was saved. If you remember back to a minute ago, if you'd like, you can rewind the recording back, but this delivery panel before I deleted it looked quite a bit different than this, and what I've added back into this is the default one that ships. So there's kind of two different things there. We have the template panels that are shipped and included with the software, and then we have the templates themselves, which have been modified themselves a little bit. By the way, I should also point out that among the list of panels, if I click add again, there are also a number of extra panels. So we already saw that we have one extra that was included with this template, but we have a number of up to 4 extra panels that we can have that really have no default purpose, and they can be used for creating completely customized panels. So if I select extra 2 here, it is going to be completely blank for us except for the cancel menu button. So we could add whatever till functions we want to, and then have a panel selection button placed on another panel that's going to take us to this extra panel that we've created for ourselves. And I should reiterate that each function map can have different till functions on its panels. Some function maps that are going to be used on different tills within the same venue or even within the same store could have completely different purposes, and therefore a completely different set of panels and a different set of functions even on the same panels if need be. And again, even if we have different till function maps that are going to be on the same till, potentially different times of the day or different days of the week, they could all have the same panels, but have the panels configured differently or have different till functions set up on them. Cool, so just a couple quick notes on these panel settings. They apply just to the currently active panel, so each panel on a function map can have a different aesthetic design. Let me just head back to our function 1 panel here. So these buttons wide and buttons high, these are of course used to just set the number of buttons that will be available horizontally and vertically respective on the panel. For example, this one here is configured to have 8 buttons wide by 2 buttons high. So we've got a total of 16 buttons there that are going to be available on this panel. But I believe some of these panels, are going to be configured a bit differently, but that is again something else that is customizable for us there. I think you've probably caught on that, as with our product key maps, these till function maps are very customizable for us. Speaking of which, the default forecolor and back color here, similar to the product key map, are just going to determine the default colors of the button's text and the background within each panel, the background for the buttons. So to change either of those, we would just click on the color swatch and then select a different color, but I'll just leave these ones. Each button's individual forecolor and back color can also be configured separately within the button settings here. Alright, now this draw button horizontally flag, this is used to control whether double buttons on the till screen are going to be drawn horizontal or vertical. So for example, to have a double size button, 2 buttons that have been configured exactly the same need to be sequential on the panel. If this flag is enabled for horizontal, then the sequential buttons will need to be next to each other. So we've got a couple examples here. We've got name and guest these are the exact same function buttons here, so they will appear as a double button on the till. And we've got seat number here as well that's going to appear double. Now, if this flag were disabled, what's going to happen then is sequential buttons will need to be stacked vertically for the double size button to appear double high. So if I have that off, what would happen here actually is these would show as single buttons, and I don't believe, no, there would not be any double stacked buttons on this panel. I doubt there will be any that will come across. That is correct, and you can see also that this can be, because these settings are specific to the panel, that flag can obviously be turned on for some panels and be turned off for some others if we would like to. Just turn that back on. And also I'll point out while we're up here that we have the ability to display the function map as it'll show on each till, so similar to the option in the product key map setup. But I'll just leave that on our first workstation here. Alright, enough about panels. I think we've gone through those pretty thoroughly. I hope that I've explained them well enough for you. So we'll chat more about the functions and our sub-functions within each panel. So you've probably noticed as I've been clicking around and showing things, but just to be clear, once we have a panel selected, we can click a button space within the panel to configure that specific button to perform an individual till function. So when we have a button space that's selected, we can right click it if we would like to copy it and then paste it, or we can actually clear the function from the space. We can also, though, when we have one selected, is we can change or we can set the function for the button space from within the button settings section here. So there's a bunch of stuff to go through here. We'll just get into it. The button text is obviously exactly that. Just note that while there is not necessarily a character limit, some characters may get sort of truncated or cut off depending on the button size and how the panel is configured, so just keep that in mind. The function dropdown, this is a very important one. It's really where we probably should get started when we are configuring a button, because it is going to list all of the categories of available functions. You can see them here. So we have tables and accounts, we have operator functions, we have discount functions, so on and so forth. As I mentioned, we have hundreds of subfunctions, but we usually just typically call the subfunctions functions. But we have hundreds of them, and it will just take some time and experience to learn what's what. But I will show you a shortcut in just a minute, just in case you can't remember exactly where each subfunction belongs. But speaking of subfunctions, this dropdown will list the subset, I guess, of the specific things that are related to the selected function from that dropdown, and these will change dynamically when a function has been chosen. So if I change the function, so we can see first what we've got here for tables and accounts, there's a couple dozen or so there, and if I change this to clear and cancel, there's just clear and cancel. If I change that to operator, we have a few operator related subfunctions. If I change it to tender and payment, we've got a couple dozen there. I think you get the idea. Now, when a subfunction is selected, some things below in this button settings section are going to also change dynamically. Directly below the subfunction dropdown, we have a description or some further information regarding the subfunction that's going to be provided, just to give us a little bit more context to what the subfunction is or what the subfunction can be used for. And then we have our item, sub-item, and key fields. However, they may or may not be applicable to the selected subfunction. However, when they are applicable, I'll try to find one that is. There we go. When they are applicable, then we'll have some descriptions here of how they can be used to affect just the different behavior of the till function that we've selected. Before we get more into those though, I do want to point out the shortcut that I mentioned a minute ago is this find function option. So this can be very helpful to save us some time rather than manually scrolling through the function and subfunction dropdowns to just search for a till function by entering part of either the function or the subfunction name. So if I search for purchase, for example, it'll return two related subfunctions here with their descriptions because they both have the word purchase in the title of the subfunction itself. But I'll just cancel that. But yeah, that can be very helpful to quickly locate a till function. But back to these item, sub-item, and key fields. So the behavior that these fields contain, again, if any, is going to be displayed dynamically when a subfunction has been selected. Now, more often than not, these are going to be number entry fields, and the number that's entered is going to determine a certain behavior that will occur when the till function button is used from SmartPause. Some of this will make more sense once we cover other material in upcoming lessons, and as I said, we'll come back and refer back to some related till functions in those lessons. But for example, the one that we've got selected now that's labeled table here is going to be and is the subfunction called graphical table. This is one of a couple different subfunctions that we have that can be used to start new tables and to open tables, but tables belong to what's called a table group. So within the item field here, we would set which table group the button will open tables for, so that's what that information's telling us there. For the sub-item field, we can then optionally use this to control a number of things that we can see here, and the key field can optionally be used to preset a table number or a starting table number in this case. But each subfunction will have different uses for these fields. Some may not use them at all. Most of them I think will at least use the item field. If the field has multiple numbered options available, like the sub-item field does here, numbers can be added together to configure the multiple options together that will affect the till function's behavior. So for example, if we wanted to attribute the behaviors of 1, 2, and maybe 8 here, we would just need to enter 11 into the field. So 1 plus 2 plus 8 gives us 11. Occasionally, these fields can be used to enter some text that might either be linked to some database record or that might appear somewhere on the till when the function is used. But in those instances, they'll be labeled as such to tell us that that's the case. Alright, moving down to the other button settings here. Some of them you can probably guess what they do, and I've already mentioned the back color and the fore color here, but some of them will need some explanation for sure. So the operator privilege drop down, this is used to select one of the system's operator privilege flags, which each operator may or may not have enabled. These 7 operator privilege flags that are just labeled very generically, privilege flag 1 through 7. So for example, if the till function button is configured with privilege flag 1 as set here in the dropdown, only operators with that till privilege flag enabled will be able to use that till function. As a refresher of what these are, they're referring back to the operator record and on our till privileges tab where we have these till button privileges, and just like we saw in that dropdown, these are numbered 1 through 7. So an operator will need to have the corresponding flag turned on to then be able to use any till functions that have that flag set in the dropdown. It is important to note though that some operator privilege flags such as, I should have just left that open, some operator privilege flags such as manager functions and table sales, they are still necessary when applicable to be able to complete certain functions from the till. In those cases, they will work in conjunction with these till button privilege operator flags as well. This flag below the dropdown, no manager required, is actually separate to the operator privilege setting here and applies only if the function normally would require manager privileges to be able to be used. So again, back to the operator list. If a till function normally requires that this manager function's flag be turned on for an operator, we can then turn this flag on to make it so that that's not required. If it's on, then the function button won't require manager privileges if it otherwise normally would. So for example, if a till function does normally require that the logged on operator has that manager function's privilege flag enabled to perform the function, enabling this flag will allow any operator, whether they have that flag turned on or not, to be able to perform the till function. Then we've got the colors, the font, and the image settings down here. They're all a bit self-explanatory, and we've already covered the colors anyway. Very similar to the button design options from the product key map. We can just use them to customize how each individual button will look, or if you'd like to use the defaults, then just turn those options on. Alright, now I won't change anything else on this panel or any other panels on this till function map. They are what they are. We have seen how to configure and change things, so yeah, feel free to customize your function maps however you need to. But what we need to do when we're finished customizing a function map and we want to then assign it to a till and use it, the first thing we need to do is to save it. Now that's going to refresh all of our connected tills. We can see the message shows us here, and it's then going to send the message through Smart Controller and update the key map on the tills. By the way, we will also need to do that, need to save a function map after, if it's already being used, and we make changes if we want to push those changes through. But once we click yes to save that, we can see the message gets sent through to Smart Controller to refresh connected tills. After we've done that, if the function map is not already assigned to a till, which in our case it won't be obviously because it's a new database, we can assign it in a number of ways. So if we head back to our till function override setup tab, we can use the change till map assignments option here. If I click that, that's going to put us into edit mode. The list down here is going to be in edit mode, and we can then, because we do have that saved and available for us now, we can choose the function override map from that dropdown. Alternatively, we could highlight the till from the list and click the edit till setup option and then set that from our override map here, which will now have it available. So we could leave it as none, which will just use the base map, or we can set it to whichever override map we'd like to. And of course, we could also access that from the venue stores in Till's list. Now in our case, since I just set this from here, what I'll need to do is exit the edit mode. When I do that, I will then be prompted to refresh the till and push those changes through. So I'll select to do that. Actually, well, before I did that, I wanted to show. Oh, okay, we can see that those have been pushed through there because there's my super long, unreadable till function name there. But anyway, you saw earlier the base map, the till functions that were available when it was just the base map that was assigned. And we can see the changes that have been pushed through and updated in real time here. So that happened without needing to restart Smart Pause or restart Smart Control or anything. Those were just pushed straight through. Just to show you that again, I'll just delete all that out so that it just says table. And that should also be a double horizontal wide button for us. And if we come back to Smart Pause now, oh, it's not a double button. Let's see why. There must be a space or something next to table for one of these. Oh, because I actually changed what this sub function is. So what I'll do is I will copy that one. I will paste it there. We'll resave that again. Now it is exactly the same and it's a double wide button for us. There we go. Cool, so we won't go through too many functions while we're here on this lesson today, just because there are so many, and some of them, as I said, we'll get through in other related lessons coming up in this course, but we will just navigate through here a little bit. Just keep in mind that, again, that I used a specific restaurant function map template and didn't really change much of anything. So this is going to be set up for that type of environment. But a couple things that we can do. One common or popular till function is the product search, so that's labeled here just as search, and that's going to give us a list of our product groups if we would like to navigate through there to find a specific product. Or we do have a search function here where we can enter a search string. Trying to think of a product name. There we go. So we could search for a sirloin meal or sirloin steaks if we'd like to there. And we'd be able to see a number of different pieces of information. If you remember back to the product lesson where we can save a comment and a recipe, we can view those from here. We could then print a recipe or print a comment. Once we get into stock control, some of this will be a bit more useful to us, but we are able to view the stock in the different stores, the stock on hand. Obviously not a good example because we're looking at a non-stocked item here. But yeah, product search, very common, very useful till function. A couple other things I'll show you is I already showed this earlier when we were looking at just the base map, but how we can navigate into some different panels and then navigate back out. If I do start a table, notice that when the table starts, the panel itself is going to change to our table panel. If we come back to here, if we look at our table panel, that is what we're looking at there. And that was just changed dynamically because the activity that we are conducting right now at the till involves tables. I've started a table, so for that reason the table panel has been opened automatically. Similar thing would happen. I won't be able to show it because there are no accounts in this database, but once we get to our accounts lesson, you'll see that when we add an account to a transaction, that the panel will change immediately to the account panel. Cool, but that is really all I've got for this lesson. So now that you've seen how to set up and assign a till function mapping, you know just how customizable everything can be. Really encourage you to go ahead and create one in your database that's suitable for your venue's environment. Test out a few different functions that are related to your operation. And as we go through additional upcoming lessons, like I said, we will return to the topic of till functions and demonstrate some ones that are related to things like accounts, to table service, to stock control, so on and so forth. So as always, thank you very much for your time and attention, and we'll see you in the next one.